While some people pay a great deal of attention to their skin, it's taken for granted by many others, and often abused in the course of their work, domestic or leisure activities. This may easily lead to dermatitis, which some dermatologists may call eczema, meaning inflammation of the skin, a condition which can affect absolutely anyone. Disorders of the skin result in the loss of approximately 2 million working days per year in men and 750,000 in women in the UK, nearly 1% of all working days lost due to sickness and invalidity. Dermatitis is responsible for much of this time lost and causes a lot of misery and inconvenience for sufferers, even if time is not lost from work. It is, however, preventable in many cases by common sense precautions. Dermatitis is not infectious or contagious and is not thought to be caused by stress. Why does it happen? Some people are more susceptible than others. Those who've had childhood eczema or hay fever or asthma, or who have close relatives with these, often have a skin that more readily develops dermatitis. Most cases of dermatitis are due to the action of irritants on the skin. Some irritants are powerful, such as strong alkalis, which can cause damage after only a few exposures, while others are milder, such as mineral oils, solvents or detergents, which usually cause damage after prolonged or repeated exposure to the skin. Everyone's skin reacts differently to these irritants. Abrasive materials, such as fiberglass, metal shavings or dusts, can have the same effect. While trouble commonly arises when the skin is in direct contact with any of these, it can be affected by substances penetrating clothing, for example by oily rags left in overall pockets. In addition, substances used to clean the skin at work, which often contain detergents or are abrasive, and even repeated hand washing with soap may aggravate dermatitis or be the cause of it. Dermatitis results because these substances remove the protective surface film of oil produced by glands around the hair roots, or attack the protective layer of dead cells on the surface of the skin, or in many cases both. These changes expose the more vulnerable tissues underneath. In addition, prolonged wet work makes the skin soggy and may increase the risk of developing dermatitis. The condition is aggravated by external factors. These include heat, particularly working in a hot environment or handling hot objects directly. Cold, such as working in cold conditions or cold weather. Low humidity, which may occur in centrally heated or artificially ventilated places. Friction, such as in mechanical work where the skin is constantly rubbed against or abraded by rough surfaces, and scratching, which is often the most persistent problem because of the troublesome itch that dermatitis usually causes. Not surprisingly, activities at home such as washing dishes or clothing by hand, painting and do-it-yourself, car maintenance and gardening, preparation of certain foods, and other hobbies such as photography may aggravate existing dermatitis or trigger it off in the first place. By contrast, some people develop skin allergy or hypersensitivity, either to common household items such as those that contain nickel or fragrances, or to certain substances at work, for example, to chromate in cement, to rubber or to resins. This is a very different process from skin irritation and involves the sensitizing or alerting of cells in the body's immune or defense systems. With people who have become sensitized, even a small amount of contact, such as touching or even approaching a substance or object to which they're allergic, can cause a severe dermatitis. The cause of allergic dermatitis can, however, be identified by skin specialists, also known as dermatologists, by patch testing the skin with the suspected problem substance. This cannot be done for irritant dermatitis. In practice, allergy and irritation often occur together, although allergy alone is a much less common cause of dermatitis than irritation. Dermatitis can arise at any time after the initial exposure to the problem substance. It may happen after a few days or even after many years' repeated exposure. It's therefore possible to work with a substance over a long period before it appears to cause problems. the onset is often subtle, with slight changes such as a few small patches of dry skin. But as the exposure continues, the dermatitis often becomes more severe. This is usually itchy and sometimes painful, especially if the skin cracks. When it does, there's a risk of infection. The nails may become distorted as well. The condition is usually confined to the skin in contact with the problem substance, but it sometimes spreads widely for no obvious reason. Initially, the trouble only arises at work and improves at home or on holiday, particularly after a break of at least a week, but eventually persists the whole time, merely waxing and waning even with active treatment. A particular problem may arise in those who work with ionizing radiation, but particularly unsealed sources. The presence of dermatitis, especially if there are cracks in the skin, increases the risks arising from contamination, and decontamination procedures will certainly aggravate the skin disorder. Classified radiation workers with skin disorders, but especially dermatitis, should seek the advice of their local health physicist or occupational health department before entering an area where contamination could occur. How can dermatitis be prevented? It pays to know what substances in the workplace may cause dermatitis. Product labels, notices, and leaflets may all provide this information. Taking care of the skin is also essential. Firstly, it's important to keep any possible irritants off the skin and therefore to wear gloves whenever necessary, unless doing so makes work difficult or hazardous. There are different types of gloves suitable for different jobs, made of materials such as cotton, rubber, leather, or PVC. There's a choice, particularly because some glove materials are attacked by certain chemicals. There are also various designs. Some thought should be given to ensure the right type of material and glove design are chosen for the job. Gloves should be fairly close-fitting and extend at least as far as the wrist or even cover the forearm to prevent liquids trickling down inside them. They must, of course, be made of a material that allows nothing irritant to seep through. Care should be taken when removing them so that substances on the outside do not come in contact with the skin. Gloves, however, must be looked after too and changed regularly, especially when they get dirty or damaged. Wearing gloves that let dirt in is worse than wearing none at all. Putting gloves on dirty hands is also worse than useless. Hands tend to sweat inside rubber gloves, and this may aggravate dermatitis. It should therefore be taken off now and again to dry out, and it's useful to have a spare pair of gloves to put on. The wearing of gloves with a cotton lining is an alternative solution. Barrier creams, which some people think of as invisible gloves, can be used to protect the skin if gloves for any reason cannot be worn. There are, as with gloves, different types of barrier cream for different jobs. Although they may make the skin feel greasy to begin with, they allow it to be cleaned more easily after work with less need for the harsh skin cleansers that many people use. Some people find that barrier creams irritate the skin, while others rely excessively on them in the belief that they provide entirely satisfactory protection. It must be stressed that gloves should be used in preference to barrier creams whenever possible. Other protective clothing is also important, such as overalls, boiler suits, boots, and occasionally air suits. Visors may be necessary to guard against airborne irritants or splashes. All of these should be discarded if dirty or not intact and removed immediately after work. They should also be looked after and stored carefully when not in use. The use of any protective guards on machines to prevent dust or liquid spraying the operator is also important. If any powerful irritants get onto the skin, they must be rinsed off at once with plenty of water. Medical assistance may be needed in some cases where very caustic liquids are involved. Substances such as resins should not be allowed to harden on the skin, and it's helpful if disposable wipes are available close at hand. Apart from this, the hands and any other dirty skin should be washed just before every tea or meal break and thoroughly at the end of work. A clean washroom with plenty of soap and towels is necessary. The use of running water is essential to rinse off both irritants and soap or other cleansers completely. If soap won't get the skin clean, a more aggressive cleanser should be used sparingly. Solvents should, however, never be used as skin cleansers. The skin should not be scrubbed too hard, and a clean towel used gently to dry it rather than rubbing vigorously. A warm air dryer is another good means of doing this. Ideally, the temperature and humidity of the workplace should be comfortable so as not to cause or aggravate dermatitis. Effective ventilation is needed to remove irritant dusts and fumes. It should be emphasized that if a substance appears to be causing irritation, additional measures may be necessary and a line manager should be informed. Some hazardous substances may need to be replaced or handled only with the aid of special tools or in special areas, such as fume cupboards. All of these precautions should be taken at home for any task where skin irritation occurs and not just at work. If dermatitis does develop, the best policy is to avoid the problem substance if it can be identified, and to inform the Occupational Health Department or Health and Safety representative in the workplace, but the person should begin the treatment himself at the earliest sign using emollients. These are creams or ointments which soften and lubricate the skin, replacing its own natural oil, which is washed off by soap, water, or irritants. Emollients also soothe and protect the skin as well. These may be provided at work as after-work creams, but others can be bought at chemists. Vaseline and emulsifying ointment are greasy and suitable for very dry skin. Cream E45 and aqueous cream are, however, more practical for most people as they're more readily absorbed by the skin. Many alternatives are available. Emollients work best if they're applied frequently as light protection before the start of a shift, when a small amount may be used to prevent the hands becoming too greasy at each break at the end of work and after each time the skin is washed. Bath oils can be useful at home to relieve itching and rehydrate the skin. It is advisable to reduce the need for soap by using dermatological washing creams, such as Wash E45, which doesn't dry the skin as soap does. After bathing, the skin should be gently dried and an emollient cream reapplied whenever the skin feels dry. Extra care should also be taken to protect the skin at work and at home, wearing gloves even for minor domestic tasks such as housework or handling certain foods, especially citrus fruits. It's important to remember that dermatitis caused by substances at work will be aggravated by everyday chemicals at home, and vice versa. If hair can be shampooed while wearing gloves, or with someone else's help, so much the better, as shampoos contain detergents. Cold conditions can also aggravate dermatitis, so it's advisable to cover any affected areas of the skin. Scratching is also bad for the skin and needs to be strongly resisted. If small areas of dermatitis get worse and become red, sore and itchy, 1% hydrocortisone cream, such as HC45, can be used and is available without prescription. Continued emollient treatment in between applications of the hydrocortisone cream is recommended to help make the treatment more effective. If, however, the condition fails to respond or worsens, but particularly if it becomes cracked or if it starts weeping or blisters develop, a doctor's help should be sought promptly. Avoiding the problem substance is the best policy, as even if the condition is healing, it quickly reappears on renewed contact. If neglected, dermatitis has a bleak outlook, as it readily worsens or becomes persistent and then becomes unresponsive to treatment. It may become impossible to carry on with work, and changing jobs doesn't always help. Simply finding another job may be difficult for people with this kind of skin disorder. Persistent soreness and itching are demoralizing, and as many people still think that dermatitis is infectious, people with it are sometimes shunned by others. Ultimately, the best treatment of dermatitis is prevention. Don't take your skin for granted. Think about it, and take care of it.